All right. Well, welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies. I am your host, David Mauro, and in the studio today is just Mike Acerra, president and founder of Luxblox, and an inventor and somebody from back in the day, as well as a Chicago Italian with long history. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the studio.
Thanks, David. Yeah, it's good to see you again.
Great to see you.
Yeah, my wife remembers you more than I do. She has. Were you in a fraternity?
I was a fight out.
Fight out. Yeah, that's right. She asked us if you were a fight out. That's what she asked.
Yeah, I was a fight out. We were all the soccer playing dudes from
That's right. Yeah.
International background stuff. I don't know. I was like a kid from the suburbs.
There are a lot of Chicago suburban kids at Knox College.
Yeah, there were. And then there was a lot of like Stelios, Creeperakos. We had tons of people from India, Pakistan,
it was awesome.
Germany,
Sweden.
Yeah. Knox College is just phenomenal. It's just a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
So, and you are still in the hometown there.
I'm still. I could see
you have
Knox
nestled
College.
in after going to like India and living in a yurt and doing a bunch of things. For those who aren't familiar with you, walk us through Luxblox high level. But today's discussion, we're going to be going about AI and how it's where AI really fits in humanity right now. We're going to talk high level, get into what it really means for people. So,
yeah, it's interesting because we started the company 10 years ago, and but AI just recently, the last 5 years, has become a big conversation again. But I went to college when you did back in the late 80s. And back then, we weren't really talking about computers that much. I had an early PC, and the Mac had just come on board. But I
was really excited by typewriters. And everybody's going to be like, you guys are so old. I'm like, listen, kids, there's a lot you can learn here. But the computers that would come out, the typewriters that would come out were that you could see part of the screen.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is a game changer because you can edit it before you hit return and before it prints onto the page.
Well, we saw we're the generation that was really the in-between generation, the middle of teeter-totter, right? Because when I was in high school, I took a computer science class, right? And it was you had a
DOS.
An
it was
amber
all that black screen with
amber screen, amber or green screen, and it was you had a telephone wire that went to the bank, right?
Yep.
And hold on a second. My wife, I told her to be quiet. She's already noisy. We have adjacent offices. So so you put in your ANSI COBOL, your Fortran program, your basic program. You press send. It go to or maybe enter. It go to the bank, process it on Mylar tape, and send you back an answer, right? And then so that was happening, and then somebody brought in this little box and said, "This is a Macintosh." And we're like, oh, and it had the first object-oriented kind of mouse.
Loved the initial Macs.
And
because it was the first time you can actually visualize what you were trying to do.
It's the first time that we saw the technology had just was killing science fiction. Because if you remember the movie Alien, when it came out, it was all basically just amber, green screens.
Right.
It's almost like teletypes in the spaceship. It's like, so it was like science fiction had started to have a hard time keeping up. Then we had the cell phone, the flip phone. So we were doing Star Trek. And so, it's been a very interesting ride to see how art and technology and movies have been trying to race with each other. And so I went almost Luddite after college. I moved to a hut in the woods and went pretty much off grid. I was burning my own wood and had a garden and goats and stuff, living in a hut, a yurt in the Maine woods, because I wanted to kind of really, before I went into the work world, I wanted to do a deep dive into the things I didn't cover in college. So I was interested in Buckminster Fuller and the idea of understanding geometry at a kind of a idiosyncratic level, not just academic, but like going into what Fuller did was a geodesic geometry of nature, which is what Einstein used when he wanted to do his formulas, something that wasn't normally taught. And I came out of the woods with a really deeper understanding for myself of how nature's put together. And as you know, I come from a carpenter's family. So my dad and grandfather were carpenters from in Chicago. So I grew up on a building site. So I had already had an intuitive idea of like how buildings, work together, like why buildings want to move if you don't stabilize them. Now that I had this,
and you were just holding up Luxblox.
Yeah, it's a Lux. Right? This is a demonstration of like when you put Luxblox together, it behaves like a building does. It'll move and gyro and stuff. So when my wife and I started dating, we were both interested in Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture. Chicago being a showroom of him and Louis Sullivan, and the Bauhaus and all these kind of guys. It's a showroom of architecture in Chicago, right? And so we found that when we visited Frank Lloyd Wright's house up in Wisconsin, Taliesin, in Spring Green, Wisconsin, we found a book in the bookstore called Inventing Kindergarten. And I didn't know it was invented. Did you know that kindergarten was invented?
No, I did not know that. I just thought being born here, it was just kind of an initiative from Congress.
It's that's actually interesting. So it was a German guy, Friedrich Froebel, back in the Napoleonic era. And he was a scientist. Yeah, he was a scientist. And he was a scientist, a geometer of crystals. And he became very moved by all the orphans and the fact that people really didn't know what to do with kids. And he said, I think I could solve this problem.
We still don't know what to do with kids.
Yeah, well, he had a really good idea. The first kindergartens were really amazing, and they were like genius factories. And it was adopted here in the United States, and it worked for a while. But then certain people intentionally destroyed it. And they said, well, that's going to be a feeder for our factory schools. And so it's just going to be like pre-first grade primer for the factory school. So they destroyed the kindergarten as it was originally intended. And so, but we looked at that original kindergarten. It was all about art and hands-on activities and tuning kids into nature's shapes and structures and motions. And we said, we can make a toy that resonates with that philosophy. That's why we came up with Luxblox.
So it's similar in the sense of on the shelves, it's near Legos and things, but it's so far beyond Legos that it is involved in so many curriculums across the U.S. Like I see you guys, you're on national TV all the time, and you're at the education conferences, and I've talked to teachers actually that use Luxblox, and I'm like, I know Mike Acerra. And they're like, I don't know who that is. I'm like, he made that stuff. I'm like, cool. He's the one. And they're like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. So what was your first invention in terms of Luxblox? Like,
well, it wasn't Luxblox. It was just trying to come up with a way to, I knew how nature kind of worked, right? So, but I had to think of a way to, how do you make a modular system that's off the brick grid, because nature doesn't bricks are great, but nature doesn't use bricks. Nature doesn't stack to make its structures. It does something different. It has these built-in organizing principles. That's why if you kick nature, whether it's in lava or liquid methane on the planet of Uranus or whatever it is, it's going to make bubbles. Bubbles are ubiquitous around the whole universe. Why is that? These perfect little spheres in any viscous medium, if you put a gas through it, it's going to pop into a bubble, right? Or a film, like the suds on the ocean.
It just automatically does that.
Trillions a second.
It's like a universal law.
Yeah. So why does nature effortlessly make such beautiful, symmetric, nice structures? And so we had a handle on that. And so how do you make that into plastic like Lego? So we used the same exact plastic as Lego, but we had to make a structure that inflated and deflated and turned into these beautiful geometries just out of squares. Amazing. So that's what we did. And it took, oh my God, it took so long. And I talk about technology being on the edge because this was 2012. And we had, and there were 3D printing technology was not so good. So we had to invest in some of the early 3D printers that were always breaking down. Wow. And we put 4,000 hours on a MakerBot 2X, which is a printer, and hundreds of iterations, and working with a German apprentice. He was a 15-year-old German kid from across the street. And he was our AutoCAD draftsman. So I'm an artist by training. So I draw the picture of these crazy designs. He'd put them into AutoCAD. We'd print the idea. Immediately, we knew when we put it together, the print, that it wouldn't work. We go right back into a different iteration. So we were failing to succeed, kind of like Musk does, where you just keep making iterations, and it's going to fail, but maybe it's going to fail in an interesting way, or a predictable way, or an unpredictable way. So we did that for 3 years.
The life lesson there is you didn't give up. You didn't just go, this is hard, so I'm going to move on to something else.
We knew kind of what we wanted to do. We never knew it would do this, though. The interesting is we never knew we were going to make this. We didn't know this was a thing. But
Right.
it makes
well,
sense
because it wasn't a thing until you invented it.
well, it's a hinge system. It's a kinematic system like we are. So it's like, oh yeah, but I had to look in Wikipedia and find out what that was. It's technically called a Serres linkage, named after a French guy named Serres.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's phenomenal. And right now, we'll have links in the show notes to Luxblox, but I implore listeners and viewers, check it out because it is so wonderful to give that to children, because I've just seen young people just get so creative because you can do things with it that you can't do with any other toy model or anything else.
Yeah,
right? It's almost like a live 3D version of computer animation that you can make. It's phenomenal.
It's highly probative or ponderable, because when you put it together, like one kid was making something at a show. It was a jet airplane, right? But it was something like this, like a motorcycle, right? But he built it, and he was like doing improvisational building, and he built it relatively fast. Like in 20 minutes, he had this beautiful ship. He goes, I can never have. I'm a Lego kid, but I never could have done this with Lego, because while Lego is predictable, it doesn't keep giving you new ideas as you go necessarily as much as these do, because these are cage structures. So
it doesn't bend and it doesn't go in 3 dimensions.
It's almost like plastic clay. Exactly right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So artificial intelligence. When we think of artificial intelligence, we think of machine learning. It's really nothing new. Like it's gotten decentralized in a sense, meaning it got popular. It made it to its way to mainstream now. And now if you look through Instagram, there's a million different apps that'll say this is going to do this, and you know, you can make all this money so fast, and everybody's always looking for the easy way of doing things. But
always has been that way too.
It always has been. Yeah, it really has. So let's kind of break down. Like let's get away from the snake oil salesman of AI apps and things like that, and really talk about why it really isn't a surprise and how it's really a natural evolution of our learning and our evolution.
Well, yeah, we're the frog in the pot, right? Because just what we're feeling now is this acceleration upon acceleration curves. So much is happening so fast now, but it was always happening. So, like I said, I'll use an example that people can understand probably a lot better. It's like, so I grew up on a construction site. My dad oftentimes used a handsaw. He had a skill. We call them skill saws because they're named after the company that made them skill. But circular saws. It's
a brand name like Kleenex.
Like Xerox. Exactly right.
Right.
So on a job site, if you're building a home, you might have 4 to 6 carpenters, 1 or 2 laborers, right, to frame a house. And
back in the day, there was a ton of hammering. Using regular hammers, regular saws.
You wore an apron, and you had in the apron, oftentimes it's a cloth apron, and you'd have 16 penny or 18 penny nails, which are they're wire nails. They made them with extruded wire, and they cut the wire before they used to forge nails, but now they had wire nails, very cheap. And then after the war, what you have after wars is called killingery, is the science of killing people. And so after wars, you have all this innovation that goes into killing people, right? But what do you do with the money, all the infrastructure when the war is over? Right.
So we no longer have to kill people, and everybody comes home and wants to make babies. So after World War II, everyone had these beautiful stainless steel, perfect semi-spherical salad bowls. But it used to be the head of torpedoes, right? It's like, we could stamp metal now really good. So let's make these beautiful stainless steel ware. And also it was like, oh, well, we're on a job site and we're paying 18 union carpenters to do this apartment building. But we learned in World War II how to take a 308 cartridge and put it in a machine gun and fire it at a Messerschmitt, right? Using a magazine or a belt. Yep.
So it was like,
and everybody can visualize that because everybody knows what a machine gun does. Yeah, everybody's seen the pictures of them loading up the bullets in the belt while the machine gun is shooting. Or
a steel box, like a magazine. You slap it into an AR-15 or an M16. Yep. So they said, let's do that. So I saw my dad. He never used one, but in the 1980s and 90s, you started seeing propane and pneumatic and electric hammer guns come online, and then a carpenter now could basically do the hammering of 3, 4, 5 carpenters as fast as you can pull the trigger. You were nailing. Okay, so you're just feeding the car,
and that's a natural evolution. once again, it gets back to that belief that I know a lot of people have a concern of, well, AI is going to take my job or robots are going to take my job. And I've never believed that once, but I believe that people leveraging the advances in
Or that's
technology
or like
may.
they're complaining about it.
Right.
Okay, so people sometimes don't realize how full of shit they are because I mean we still go to the museum and mourn the memorial of all the saddle makers, right? The poor saddle
Right.
makers, all the leather workers, and the people who used to shovel the horse shit because Chicago was
Right.
built high up off the street because you'd have about 4 to 6 feet of horse shit at any one time on a
Everywhere.
city street. Yeah,
Yep.
so it's like boy, I really mourn the day
When we could do that.
when we could do that. We get to wear boots because there was shit and piss everywhere. So all this
Well,
progress
that's a good
is,
point though, because isn't AI kind of like it's a generational evolution? Like when you
yeah,
think about that time and the innovation of the automobile, right?
yeah,
Everybody kind of mourns the loss of the horse-drawn carriage. It's like, well, yes, there were some horse-drawn carriage mechanics that might have lost their jobs, but we burgeoned an entire industry of automakers and designers and mechanics,
right.
etc.
Now here's
Right,
the
and it's exponentially bigger.
and
So,
there's a moral equation to it too because people don't think of engineers as being moral or virtuous agents, but they
mhm,
might be the most moral and virtuous agents when you come to just practical outcomes.
mhm,
A case in point is Henry Ford. He
mhm,
wanted to make before Henry Ford the horseless carriage was for millionaires and rich
mhm,
people, right?
right,
And you might have a few in a town, and they'd be an oddity, and because they were very handmade,
mhm,
and they were expensive. And he said, "Well, I want to make the cars that people in my factory can afford,
right,
which were poor people." And they
right,
thought he was insane. But he of course created ergonomics and mass production,
yeah,
and Elon Musk is definitely the torchbearer now, right? Where I'm going to make
mhm,
rockets that go to space and come back and are recyclable, reusable.
right,
And so, because I want spaceflight to be cheap, so more people can
mhm,
go to, so we can open the dream for everybody, enabling people, giving people transportation, cheap transportation around the country, to everybody is such a virtuous, beautiful thing. Now, people can say, "Oh, cars make the world ugly," blah blah blah. Yeah, but those people have a car, right?
right.
So,
And think about it. Most people will watch this discussion, right, on a laptop that we now have at our homes, right, or
yeah,
on a phone that we now carry with us everywhere.
yeah,
But that was Steve Jobs' democratization and
exactly,
bringing this vast amount of technology. Because prior to Apple doing certain of these iterations, right, the computers were only for large corporations that could have their staff using them, right? But now it's everywhere, and that is
yeah.
virtuous to me. Like bringing something that is not just accessible to the exclusive, right? Not just accessible to the affluent, and bringing it to everybody is critical.
He broke a cardinal rule, they say, of businesses: don't invent something that people don't know they need. Like
Right,
again, you have to educate them. Like so, he said, he famously said, "I want to make computers for like women in their kitchen," which sounds
right,
sexist these days, but I mean, he made it for kids. I mean, for everybody, right?
right.
But at the time, you're right. People thought, oh, computers are for like the Department of Defense and big insurance companies and the
Yep.
bank or whatever, but definitely not for my wife or me
Right,
or my
right.
kids, right?
Yeah,
And he's like, "Oh no, it's not it's not. Don't think about it. The big box in the big room with the air conditioning. It's going to be something you hold in your hand. It's going to be Jetsons." And we got away from that. We got away from. You probably remember this. Remember back in the 50s and 60s, they had those magazines called Things to Come, and they had
of
these
course.
beautiful illustrations of the future, floating cities, and
Hmm.
Jetson kind of stuff. We, for some reason, even with the age we live in, we're not thinking about a really cool future. Almost all the movies now, the science fiction movies, are dystopian. They're all
Right.
like Mad Max and Blade Runner and Aliens and
Hmm.
just these dark, awful futures. And
Hmm.
I don't know why the hell we're doing that because the technology now is showing a world of what I call a world of impossibilities. That we're going to have not improbables, but impossibles happening more and more every day. And I think it's a really cool future.
Absolutely. So the historical context of AI and the bringing to market about a year and a half ago of generative AI. I mean, it's really quite phenomenal.
Yeah.
When, we're so used to Googling things, whether we use Google or Bing or Safari or Firefox or whatever the browser is that we
Mhm.
choose. But the point is we're still doing online searches, and we're used to asking a question and then seeing the blue lines that are hyperlinks and then clicking on that. But somebody wrote that, or their vendors or they're sponsoring to be there. And it might be truthful, it might not be. But now we can put that same inquiry into AI and it will look at the entire history of the internet and then generate an answer and provide it to us.
Yeah, and
It's
it's like
phenomenal.
it was like when we were lazy in high school and we were given those horrible assignments where we had to use the reference library. Oh my
Right.
God.
Yeah, it
And
was
maybe you have to
terrible.
go to microfiche,
Yes.
microfilm, and yet that's the librarian. And the librarian always hated us because I was an idiot. So I'm a football player, like, oh, I got to use the microfiche. And so, but it's like now you walk. It's like that lady on Progressive Insurance. Now it's like the library now is that white room, and you walk into it, and you've got whatever her name is, and she's like,
Flow.
yeah, Flow is like
Flow.
Grok or Flow is like Google. And
Right.
she's like, what do you want to know about? I want to know about the history of grain production in the 19th century. And specifically, what do you want to know? I'll just tell you, right?
Right.
There's no more microfiche. And then, so that's just, again, it's, people inherently are lazy. They just want the answer they want so they can get on with the thing they have to do, right?
Right.
And so do we miss microfiche? Do we miss those giant publications, those giant books of all the old magazines they'd have in the libraries? No, nobody misses that at all.
Nobody misses that. Or having to go through 6 or 7 articles that you find in an online search and have to then understand it and make sense of it and then formulate your answer.
And that might not be good, might not even be good data.
Right. Exactly. And this is generating that answer for you. Now you still have to do independent verification because it's not always 100% accurate, but it's pretty darn close, right? In general, overall, it at least gets you moving toward what the truth is, which is good.
Well, it's like it's so weird. It's like it'd be like if you said, well, the only car we're going to have is going to be Ford. Ford's going to make the only cars. The Italians aren't allowed to make cars, and the Japanese aren't allowed to make cars. It's just the Americans, and it's just Ford.
Right.
You'd be like, well, I guess it's smart. You don't even think about that, right? So of course you're going to have Grok come online that's going to make Google look like an asshole when it makes Vikings Asian, right?
Right.
So it's like you're going to have competing AIs, which is awesome. It's like free speech. The more speech, the best speech is more speech, right? The best AI is more AI. Let them fight it out and say, you are so full of shit. You're lying to these people right now.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. That's what's going to happen.
Exactly. And it just lets the market, because eventually in there is the truth. And
they can cite the data. They could both cite the data, and you say, okay, and is the data corrupted, right? So yeah.
So how there's a concern that generative AI could replace creativity, but it can enhance it, can't it?
Yeah, my background's art. And so, and art and art history. So I see it as it's on the continuum. There's no breach of this is past history. This is not past history. This is in the timeline. It makes utter sense. Most people, what the AI is doing is making people embarrassed by the fact that they really don't even know what they're doing. They don't even know what they are. Like, we're automation. We're so 99.99% automated that it's embarrassing. Like all of our billions of cells have hundreds of millions of chemical reactions every second, and it's all, none of it we decided upon, right? So we're highly automated creatures, and the little bit of free will we have, we hardly ever exercise. We like habits and routines, and even our opinions, sometimes we just regurgitate other people's opinions. We don't come up with our own. So we're highly automated. We're really kind of like robots in a sense, biological robots. And when it comes to art production, let's give you a simple example of pottery. Since our biggest historical record is pottery, there's shards of it all over the world that lasts forever. It doesn't go away. And so everyone was doing pottery. And at first, of course, you'd have to take coils, you'd roll coils and make it like a stack of snakes and smooth it out and make a hand-thrown pot. Okay. So what was the big innovation over hand-thrown pottery? Do you know?
No.
The pottery wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so somebody had the idea of getting a wagon wheel and putting
so what you're saying is back in the day, they would roll it out and then have to loop it around and then smooth it out, and then you would have a
because
pot.
it was
But then the
desirable to
pot-
have
Yeah,
around.
you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. The invention of the pottery wheel is they could make it spin. They didn't have to hand roll it. They would just
It was a
bring it up.
revolution. So
Yeah.
it brought down the cost of it too, because now instead of having one person sitting there all day making this hand-thrown pot, you can just get a lower skilled worker on a big wheel, center the clay so it's going around symmetrically, and then just stick your fingers in and bloop, you have this beautiful amphora, right?
Yeah.
And so they started mass producing these pots, and so they could so they weren't just funeral ornaments, which would be a high-end thing for a rich king or a princess or whatever, to put your ashes in or whatever. Now it could be something you put your olive oil in and your grapes in, or whatever you're going to put it in the pot. You could make it for a packaging. Right? And because you had packaging, now you could transport food and liquids over the ocean in caravans.
Be an economic advantage to that.
Yeah. And so again, that's automation. The wheel was automation. And then you had a thing where they decorate the pots. And so you'd have a kid, usually it was a kid because obviously it's cheaper labor, or a crippled person, but a full grown man and woman were doing important things, right? So you'd put little designs on a pot, which it took a lot of skill. And they figured out very quickly that if you spin the pot around with and you had a little needle, and you just touch the pot with the needle, you could score it with these even lines all the way down. But you could barely see them, like pencil marks. You could barely see them on the still kind of leather hard, wet pottery. And then you could go and you could fire it. They have these lines, and then you could paint. You could see the lines like tracing paper when we were kids when we did our handwriting, and it gave the people lines. And then they taught themselves little algorithms, little kind of design tricks, so they can make a repeating pattern. Okay, so you made these beautiful geometric repeating patterns. So they're coding. They literally had to have these algorithms like, loop over the top, loop over the bottom and stop, loop over the top, loop over the bottom and stop, and make a little wave. And so they started using this artists always were trying to make a living and make money. And they realized that part of their job was to replicate themselves. If they were the higher skill set person in the workshop, in the studio, you wanted your studio to become a workshop. You wanted to replicate your skills. So Leonardo started as a painter in someone else's studio as a kid. And then when he had a workshop, he employed all these kids, or young men, and then he would train them, and he'd only do the executive functioning of the painting, and they'd do all the angels and the backgrounds, and he'd just, fix it if they had to fix it. So Italian artists and French artists and Dutch artists were always trying to mass produce as fast as they could because, time is money. It always has been. It's not some precious thing where
scaling. It's all
about scaling. It always has been about scaling. Always has been.
That's phenomenal. In terms of the economic perspective of AI, when we think of jobs, what our jobs are versus tasks, let's delve into that. And how does AI play a role?
It's a cultural thing, and it's almost like a religious instinct. Where I have a friend who's a roofer, great guy. He's a good roofer, third generation roofer, family business.
It's a tough job.
And it's a horrible job. Nobody wants to do it. Usually it's like you have to get prisoners to do it because it's a wretchedly difficult, hot, uncomfortable job to get on a roof in the summertime and put down tar shingles or whatever. So I said, robots are coming, dude. And the first job they're going to replace is probably drywalling. And then it's going to be roofs because it's dangerous. Insurance companies don't want to insure it. Insurance companies kind of drive a lot of technology, of course, right?
Right.
So you're gonna get a gantry kind of robot that's gonna put that stuff on. They already have the gantry robots that put the stuff on the roof for the roofers, right? But the idea of putting down plywood and nailing it down, you're gonna have a robot doing it in the next 5 years. You're gonna see them come online, and in a way, thank God, because people break their backs. It's dangerous work. And we romanticize a job saying, well, what about the roofing union? And what about, we've been doing this for hundreds of years. It's going to go away. We need more skilled workers. No, we need to get shit done. That's what a job is. You go to a place and they say, we got to get this shit done. So that's what you're going to do. Right. But if the stuff got done, maybe we have to lay you off because we're not
getting enough stuff done.
You got it done. Thank you. Thank you for your service. So, it's like having a standing army. It's not a good idea to have a big standing army because you have to give them work to do. That means war. So you want to kind of like draw down your standing army. And of course, soldiers are also difficult because, they get drunk. And so people learned a long time ago not to have such a big standing army. Like you draw it down, give them a farm, get them working, become citizens. So there is this idea of that the jobs exist for workers.
Right. Like it's a right. Like it's a fundamental human right.
It's a weird idea. You know, it's like, no, jobs don't exist. Jobs exist because things got to get done. And that was the whole point. Things got to get done. And if we can get things done faster, and it takes one worker when it took 5, like 2 years ago, then it takes one worker.
Right. And you just need to learn what that worker does so that you can be the worker.
Yeah. But the work itself, I mean, I'm sure there is, of course, holy work. There is good work, right? But,
work with a cause and a mission behind it.
And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I enjoy a little bit of drudgery. I don't mind doing the dishes. I don't mind, mowing the lawn. I really don't. It's like I like to use my body, I like to get out and do things, but I don't expect a golf course to hire 40 kids with hand mowers to go mow the lawn at the golf course.
Right.
They're gonna get a tractor, and no one's gonna say, "Oh, those poor kids, they used to mow the lawn at the golf course." No, and so
there's some examples of how AI has evolved things. When you think of certain platforms, think of Canva, for example. Like Canva has really democratized and made design available for small businesses, because it used to be really expensive for them to get a website, they have an event coming up. How do we get the word out? How do we put it out on social media? You had to hire all these organizations, and that got in the way of the small business spending more money on inventory and other things that it needs to ultimately sell the products and services that they're designed to do, getting stuff done. Right. And
without a doubt.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Things like Canva that ties into AI and all of this thing, they're able to hire somebody even part-time, or just have one of the other workers during their downtime from selling or whatever, develop the announcement for the event. Right.
And if your listeners don't know, Canva is kind of it's Adobe for dummies kind of thing. It's a graphic.
It's phenomenal.
It's a graphic
so
program.
Easy to use.
It's like what Publisher was back 25 years ago.
Yes.
Where basically Publisher took graphic artists and publishers, and it took their jobs in a sense, and said you could publish your own little newsletter on your own computer, right? And what Canva does is it says you don't need to hire necessarily that graphic artist that's going to lay out your designs. And but Canva's evolving fast now too, because now with AI, Canva can learn quickly and say, here are the trending Instagram concepts. Okay,
right.
So give me your raw photos if you have any. Otherwise, we can generate some pictures for you. Right. And we'll put them in this thing. We'll have a little moving banner up here, and we'll have some flashing words down here. Here's some really cool music that's copyright free. And it's happening so fast that pretty soon you're just going to talk to your computer like Geordi LaForge in Star Trek and say, I need an Instagram photo or thing with a pretty girl on a beach, and she's selling my my towels.
Right.
And she's got all her friends. All her friends like her because her towels are so cool. And blah, blah, whatever it is, right? And
Exactly.
Canva's just going to make it for you. It's going to make 5 different versions. If you don't like it, say, I want more fuchsia and less teal.
And then if you want to go in and customize it, it's intuitive. You can figure it out. Like, it's just so easy.
Yeah. And so if you check online and go like to a Facebook post of like Synthetic Studio or Midjourney, which is an amazing AI program where a lot of people go to make these pictures of these beautiful futuristic things and women warriors. And now with Grok is doing real people. So you'll see a video of Trump dancing with Kamala Harris, and it looks just perfect. It's amazing. And what also it's democratizing, it's enabling small businesses to act like big business, because they don't have to hire Fifth Avenue artists and firms to do really great ad content. But it's also enabling artists, like you could make a really decent science fiction movie now on an iPhone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and you could be a teenager and do it.
Yep.
That's not, and you don't think Spielberg would have jumped at that chance when he was 12? He would have made a great movie. He would have made his best movie maybe when he was 11 or 12. So that's what's happening now. We're able to now find those potential Spielbergs out there in middle school or younger, because they have these amazing tools. And who complain about that? It's just amazing stuff. Now, all kids won't use it. Some kids are going to just live in their mom's basement and play video games and go into the metaverse and lower their testosterone and become like, I don't know what they're becoming, but that's not the technology's fault.
But that gets into the question of creation versus consumption, right?
That's a good point.
When you play a video game or you watch TV, you're consuming, right? When you scroll social media, you're consuming. But if you want to be seen on social media or advertise for your event that you have going on, right, then you need to create. And that's where AI it's really helped with democratizing and taking away a lot of that drudgery or the expense of having third parties do it.
It's perfectly said. Yeah.
All right. Hey,
And
I like that. I like hearing that. That's why we have you on, man.
You're
that is
perfect.
Phenomenal. But now,
well,
on this show, we talk about the risks a lot, and we've talked a lot about deepfake because, to me, it's really scary because, for years we've been talking about, how do you spot a phishing email? How do you spot somebody that's trying to socially engineer you or basically trick you? It's the old, it's just leveraging technology to do the same thing we've been doing for hundreds of years. It's not that complicated, everyone.
No.
Right. And, they appeal to a sense of urgency. They try and get that amygdala hijack going in your brain so you can't even process and it drives behavior. But deepfakes raise it to a level. And it's so funny because whenever we talk about spotting a phishing email or things like that, everyone's like, that's so boring. That's so dumb. We know how to do it. I'm like, no, you don't, because it is still the cause of not just some of the breaches, a vast majority of them. It's still
because you're willfully opening. You're willfully. It's like the vampire at your door. You're letting them in. You're
openly letting them in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we dig into when we see a big data breach online. I'm always digging into how did they do it. And 8 out of 10 times, 4 out of 5 times, it is them fooling somebody that lets them in. So we have all the firewalls and all the systems in the world to protect us from harm.
And forget about accents. It's not going to be
let them in.
It's not going to be some guy with an Indian accent you can spot in a second.
And grammatical errors used to be a red flag. Those are gone now because
you have AI voices that are perfect and listen and can respond. And it's
live video, Mike. I mean, live video. Like what happens now is if you don't fall for the email, they'll send you a calendar invite and they'll get on a Zoom or a Teams video and be speaking to you, deep faking. And you see this a lot on romance scams, right? People think that they're talking to Todd. Todd's this great guy from Ohio. Meanwhile, Todd lives in Nigeria and is deep faking himself the entire time, right?
Well, the word biomimetic?
No. What does that mean?
Biomimetic means technology that imitates biology. Like the F-14 famously had landing gear that was based kind of like on the grasshopper's legs, so it could land on an aircraft carrier at a high velocity and
and just kind of land.
And it looked like a grasshopper's legs. So that's called biomimetic engineering, where you're kind of imitating what biology does. But my view is that we're biological, and I don't think that anything really isn't technically biological. I think we're living in a biological expression. We're tool makers. We're interacting with our tools, but we're still dealing with biology in a sense. So what I was going to say is this: you just brought up a really interesting point about the amygdala and the idea of seduction. Human beings have been seducing each other since time immemorial. Some man or woman wants to get into that cave, and they're going to say anything and do anything they can to get into that fucking cave, right? So they're going to make themselves look nice, say cool things, be complimentary, flatter, whatever it takes, do deeds, do tasks, whatever it is to get into that cave, to be with that clan, to be with that woman, whatever it is, right? We are seducers. That's what we're programmed to do it because we're transactional creatures. We found out it's better not to always kill the other person and beat them down. Sometimes you can make a deal with them, okay? Right. Or you could deceive them. You could trick them. So we've been tricking people, deceiving people, making deals with people, compromising with people since before we could speak. And nothing has changed at all. It's the technology now is making it so we're still doing it.
You can hit people from
the tools are so
without even being geographically located near them.
They're so good. But it's no different than the caveman trying to get in a cave or the woman trying to seduce the man or vice versa. It's a seduction. It's the oldest crime in the book. And
absolutely.
But now
so how should people view AI when we, as we're wrapping up here this discussion, when we think of AI's context in humanity for the average user, like how should they look at AI? I mean, a lot of people fear it. A lot of people just don't understand it, so they're not bothering to learn it. And I think that's a risk.
Again, I think it comes down to how much do you invest in yourself anyways? Like, you think it's hurting you or whatever, but like, we used to make jokes. When we were younger, we lived in the city, and people would say, I live in the city because of the culture. And then you're talking to your friends, like, when's the last time you went to a play or a show
Right.
or what? You're watching Netflix like everybody else. You're
Right.
sitting in your town. So it's like, are we developing ourselves? Are we learning other languages? Are we pushing ourselves? These tools are amazing for doing that. If you want to learn a language now, it's never been a better time to learn
It's
another
never been
language.
easier.
A lot of things, but you still have to do the work. You still have to make the commitment to better yourself. We have the best answers now to our questions than ever before. Right? If you want to get into shape, the best advice in the world now is online, or nutrition. It's all there for you. So, and I'll mention this too. This democratizing now is going to ramp up so fast. Where now, John F. Kennedy Jr. or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is talking about nutrition and health. It only takes about a 20 by 40 foot piece of land, okay, to feed 2 people year round. That means you could actually blanch your tomatoes and put them in jars, and so a relatively small plot of land could feed a big family year round in terms of its vegetables and fruit and things like that. And with the coming online of robotics, where you basically have robot helpers like Optimus Prime or something doing your weeding, tending your garden, helping you with how optimizing for sunlight and everything else, you're going to have people basically doing family gardens like never before. So you're freeing people to really be healthier and go back to the land, and because you're eliminating a lot of the drudgery and a lot of the headache of like, I'm not an expert gardener. How am I going to know that? Well, Optimus Prime can help you with what you don't know, or whatever it is, whatever robot it is. So this stuff's coming fast, and it's going to transform society, I think, in a very positive way.
That's phenomenal. What are some of the AI platforms that you have found very useful in your crafts? I mean, you do a lot of artistry.
Yeah. For my business, it's different because of Luxblox. It's a consumer business, online business. So we need graphic art. So we've used Canva, use a lot of Adobe, and Adobe is an older program, but it's always updating fast. Yep. We use ChatGPT, 4.0. I haven't tried Grok yet. And then we just started recently using Midjourney, which is an amazing visual arts program.
Midjourney is amazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah. It's gorgeous.
Really great.
And you get a lot of young men who put kinky pictures of women with sweat all over them. I mean, they get a lot of that stuff because, again, it's the amygdala. You're going to get certain industries drive technology. I won't mention those industries right now, but you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, we know.
Yeah. So, and that's going to happen with all these
Many
technology.
of them have phenomenal cybersecurity, believe it or not, because they have a view of if you're online and you're not paying, we're going to have pictures that if you click on them, or videos that if you click on them, there's going to be a lot of malware. But if you're a paying client, you are either our customer or our enemy. Like, we've talked to people in that industry, and they are like, they're at war online, and they take it very seriously because privacy is so important in that industry.
Would your advice be that to people right now that if they get on their phone and look at any one of these sites, they're at risk, would you say?
Yes, absolutely. That is where most malware sits, unless you're a paying customer. If you're a paying customer, then, and I'm not promoting that, but I'm saying that if you are going to be...
What do you think the percentage is of people who actually pay for it?
Oh, that's a good question. That I don't know. I could ask somebody in the industry.
Because you think that would be the carrot, right? Would be like, it's free, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I think the ability, Grok is the system and the platform that does the videos, right? The creation of realistic videos. And
Grok is the AI for Twitter, for X.
Right.
And recently Grok started doing visuals too. And unlike the other platforms like ChatGPT won't let you, I can't use David Mauro on your image on ChatGPT. But I think if you're a public person, or you could go on and put your image on Grok, or someone without their permission, you could use,
Well, and that's scary because that's where we get into all of the deep fake social engineering, right? I mean, there was a recent case. I mean, check this out, Mike. There was a recent case where a superintendent of a school outside of Baltimore lost his job because there was an athletic director that he was investigating for some allegation of some money being missing or whatever. Well, that athletic director got mad at the superintendent for going after him, and deep faked his voice and certain things, claiming that he was racist. And the superintendent lost his job because the board was like, we hear you saying this. And then later on, he had to get a forensic company to come in and show that is synthetic media. It is not accurate. I mean, here's a guy who lost his career because of that. Yeah, it's horrible. It's just horrible.
But the word's going to get out that you can't trust anything you see or hear on you know.
No, especially it's an election year too.
Yeah.
So we're already starting to see it because now whenever, you know, somebody, a family member or whatever says, hey, this political person said this. And I'm like, we have to independently look that up to know whether that's true, right? Because you have to look it up and you just do searches online to see if they actually said that.
And to a certain degree, we're okay with being lied to when it comes to art and comedy and fashion. Women are completely fine, especially women, but men too, with being lied to. Elle magazine, Vogue. We know those women's necks aren't that long. We know they're not that skinny. Whatever. We're like, so what?
It's almost like we've been socially conditioned for this. It's like the perfect storm, right? Because we've been having airbrushed images for decades. Yeah, that's been going on for decades.
Yeah, and with the filters now on your phone, you could filter your face. People are lying. They're consciously, they want to lie. They want to lie. They want to say, I look like my eyes are bigger than they really are. You know,
right?
It's crazy. But like, I'm surprised that anyone is surprised by that because you know, back in the Renaissance, women would Titian was a famous painter, and his Venuses would have red hair and really alabaster white skin. But this is freaking Italy, right? So the women wanted to look like Titian's Venuses, so they'd go out, they'd get their hair dyed red, right? Which has the dye to set in the sun. So you're walking down a Venetian street, you smell this rotten meat because women are putting these big slabs of meat in their face to keep the sun off their beautiful skin while their hair is setting. So
unbelievable.
Shit doesn't change. I mean, people are willing to put, you know, so.
That's exactly right. So at the end of the day, in terms of where AI sits, it's really not a surprise.
I don't think historically there's any aberration from what's going on. We just see it's about, if you do it scientifically, it's about curves of progress, right? And because there's so many patents now coming at such a rapid rate and so much innovation, it's hard to keep that curve from not being vertical. You have to keep stretching the horizontal axis of that curve because it's an acceleration upon an acceleration. Orders of magnitude are happening now. And so you just have to know that the stream is getting quicker, but still a stream.
Yeah.
Still, you know.
Yeah. That's absolutely phenomenal. And it's really not as much of a threat as people think. I think it's more of an opportunity. But definitely lean into it, experiment with it, try it.
I think the lethality is worse. Like it's like saying, well, a bow and arrow it's just as much a threat as a musket. No, muskets are more dangerous. For sure. And atomic weapons are way more dangerous. So AI can be a really lethal prospect if we don't have the discipline to understand it and use it right. I think probably.
What's your view on regulating AI? Like putting
Groucho
certain
Marx
guardrails.
would say, I'm against it. I think that, but I think Elon's got the right idea of there should be some open sourcing going on, and there should be some competition going on, but there should be it shouldn't be secretive.
Right.
You know, I think these secret societies like Google and stuff that keep things behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz. Haven't we learned our lesson? The guy behind the curtain, you can't trust him. Right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
There's something about that, about open sourcing it and democratizing the process, so everyone's kind of like part of the process. I think, and having you know, your own personal AI that can be like your kind of like checker, like what you guys do at your work. Like if you had like a technology that would check they have it now. You could check a video and they'll tell you if it's a deep fake. You know? Correct. Yeah. I mean, famously, I think the Russians said that the Apollo 11 was a deep fake at a conference. That might be propaganda, but so yeah, the technology is coming to where you'll be able to scan processed food at a restaurant, and if the person said there was olive oil on it, you'll have a scanner to tell you that's canola oil, dude. You're lying, seed oil. So that's coming too, and that's gonna be great.
Well, I think that'll be good for people, just to once again get to the truth. Don't say it's something that it's not.
It's got to be in service of the truth. That's what you've been talking about the whole time. What is it? The technology. What is it serving? Okay, is a person's going to lie to get into the cave, or they're going to offer a product in transaction to get into the cave, right? And so it's just about. It goes back to virtue and honesty. You're right, totally right.
That's great. Mike, what is
Always a
what's
pleasure.
coming up on the horizon? Thank you so much for joining. I always love having a conversation with you, my friend.
Slowly, we're bringing robots online. It's taking a long time to do it right, but we're going to have a robotic Luxblox. We've got
really,
yeah.
How exciting is that?
Yeah, but we also got. I'm really a big fan of World War I. So we've got the Red Baron and his flying circus, and biplanes fighting him. Those are coming online, and so we've got a lot of cool toys coming for Christmas too. So check out our website probably in the next couple months.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Luxblox.com.
Yep, we will have it on the screen, and we will have it in the show notes. Mike Acerra, thank you so much, my brother.
It's a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Good.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Well, that wraps this up. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our episode. The next one is coming right up. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast and downloading on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for watching.